Hello, everybody. This is John. I've got Jeremiah and Bernie with us today. Welcome, welcome. We are discussing together various subjects. We're going to explore religion together. And I'd like to just quickly introduce everybody, if we don't mind. Bernie, if you may.
Yeah, I'm Bernie Bradley, and I live out in Laramie, Wyoming, and been kind of watching the podcast for a while. And sorry, Wade couldn't be with us tonight, but glad to be a part of it and talk a little bit about my faith history and my experiences. I'm pretty much a novice in terms of the Bible, which is why I've been enjoying the Bible Project and things like that, and the introspective, kind of on a search, I think, for what others feel and believe. Not because I need to change anything, but I'm interested in how other people view the world. I think we're at a point where we need to kind of figure each other out and learn how to get along a little bit better.
I like that. I like that. That sounds great, actually. And good evening, Kevin. I see you're commenting from Facebook. Welcome, welcome. Kayvon, sorry. I read the writing on the page. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm going to send you a link if you can join up, Kevin. Kayvon,
Kayvon.
we'd be welcome. We'd be very happy to have you. Sorry about that,
Yeah,
everybody. I don't usually mess up names until I get
yeah.
into everybody.
Kayvon would be a great person to add into this mix. Hi, I'm Jeremiah. I'm from the Tampa, Clearwater, Florida area, and I would actually say I'm here because, like Bernie, I'm a novice when it comes to the Bible, and so I'm trying to learn and understand it more, and really trying to understand what 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 other people see and how they feel about it, and more specifically, I think I know that I have a lot of room for growth and improvement, and as a father, I know that that's some kind of I want to have a growth mindset. I want my sons to be able to understand that and to pick that up and carry that with them in their life as well. So I'm trying to practice what I preach.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yes. And that actually leads us into the question that I have. And hi everybody, I'm John, and they've kind of taken my goals as well. That's why I'm here. I want to try to learn. I want to learn about the holy books in general. I want to learn about religion, and I want to take a humble posture towards it. I want to learn what it means to have a humble posture of learning and applying that. And it's not going to be one step, one, two, three, but it's going to be little by little, day by day. That's how I'm going to take it. And I think it's a good point right now where Jeremiah mentioned about trying to follow and act on what we believe in. There's this subject of truthfulness being the foundation of all human virtues. And it's really important, first and foremost, that we start asking ourselves important questions. And I don't mean questioning per se our faiths as much as we are questioning, are we really doing what we say we are doing? If that can take us for the theme that we have today. So, am I doing what I'm saying I'm doing? Am I, as they put the words in a negative way, am I a hypocrite? Am I lying? Am I telling the truth? Am I keeping my commitments? Am I keeping my promises? Am I following through when I say I'll do something? Do I do it all the way? These are important questions I think we need to ask ourselves every day. What do you think about this, Bernie?
Yeah, you're actually hitting on a point that's really been top of my mind for a couple years now is the truthfulness, um, being so important and yet seems so elusive in our world. So what I've been doing, um, a lot of things just haven't seemed to make sense at the bigger scale. Obviously, in my life, I've really always focused on integrity and kind of what you said, John, about doing what I said I would do and delivering my best and be of best service I can. for anything that's within my control. And then this last couple of years with the whole pandemic and everything like that, I've had actually awakening that I want to get involved in how to help all of us collectively search for the truth. I don't know how to do that yet. What I'm noticing is that things are much more skewed than I ever thought. Things that I would have thought were right or wrong 5, 10 years ago, I'm now able to look back and say, I'm not sure that I had all the facts. I'm not sure that I really understood. A good example I'll tell you is like the whole the whole after 9/11 and the wars that went on. I wasn't a real supporter of it, but I felt like it was necessary. I thought we were doing what we needed to do. And now I'm looking at it saying, I'm not sure that was really the case. I'm seeing a lot more impact of materialism in our society. And I'm seeing that maybe there were other things happening that were dragging these things out. And it almost seemed like a perfect, I guess back to um, President Eisenhower warned us about the military industrial complex. And I never, I thought that makes sense. That's a natural thing to be make sure you're concerned about. But I think it's something that's really deeper in our society, especially the American society, than I ever thought. And maybe some of these things that are being driven are really being driven for material, um, gain, and not they're not real. We're not really understanding the truth, and we don't have any way to assess the truth. That's I guess that's I don't want to be blaming
Well,
anyone or being
you made a good point.
critical.
I want to. You made several points, and I want to actually ask you to clarify so I can get what you mean, if you don't
Okay.
mind. You mentioned something about this concept of how we identify ourselves, and you mentioned a few things. And if I understand you correctly, are you saying that this identity that we hold, uh, we're we're seeing one thing, but then we have all of these desires that we have that send us in a whole different direction? So
I guess
materialism.
materialism. Let me give you an example on materialism. Materialism, I used to look at that as more of a personal thing. I'm materialistic if I want a new car or if I want an iPhone versus something else. Or, I looked at it really at a personal level, like all the things and stuff that I have. That's kind of materialism. But now I'm starting to see it more systemic. Materialism is driving global decisions. It's driving a lot of things that it's a lot deeper and more prevalent and pervasive than I would have ever thought. And unfortunately, I think part of the issues with the pandemic was when we started to see canceling of voices and things like that. It was like, wait a minute, do we even have a way to raise a question and as a collective, as a group of people, explore a topic without getting into the back and forth, demonizing and things like that. It started to scare me. I don't know that we have the foundation of what we need to be able to sit down and have a disagreement, but both learn from each other and both walk away with respect for each other's understanding and learn why a certain person feels that way and and different person feels a different way. I mean, racism for a good is another example. I did a workshop with a wonderful community, and they were focused on learning about racism, and it opened my eyes that my world is very different than a person of color, and I wouldn't even have been able to think about that. And it's hard when you're in those kind of isolation bubbles. It's hard to figure out how to really discuss what is true and how to look for justice and truth. And I'm finding it, like I said, in this last couple of years, it goes way beyond
So
those kinds
these
of
these
things.
isolation bubbles. We're talking about these echo chambers where we
Yep.
only talk to friends that think as we do, and we exclude everyone else.
Yep. Yeah, and what scared me a little bit was, and I'll get a little. I don't want to. I'll just say it this way. I hope I don't upset the audience. But what really triggered me was the how we divide and move into a hatred for the opposite side. So an example was I try to stay detached and don't go there, but our society tends to go there. So back in the Obama era, we had a lot of people that really hated Obama for his policies. I'm not sure if it was racial or not, but it was certainly a strong feeling. We had the same thing with President Trump, and I don't know what was the cause there, but it went from I don't like him and I don't like what he's doing to a vehement hatred. And I'm thinking, how did we get to that point? And so it's these divisions we can't seem to um, develop any cohesive understanding with ourselves. Whatever
Definitely. We have to find a way to discuss things where there is the inclusion of the ideas and less cult of personality, more of a focus on the solution and doing something because it's the right thing, not because the people that support you tell you to do something. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I want to, because we have actually we have two people joining on, and Jeremiah, I'm gonna just message me. You got anything to say, Jeremiah? I'm gonna put you in the background for a moment. Um, One moment, please. All right. Hello, Kayvon. Hello, Simone. Welcome. You can hear.
Hi.
We can hear you. Everyone can see you, and so forth.
Hey, how you doing, John?
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Simone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on.
So Bernie had mentioned a few important points, and it's, in my humble opinion, hard to cover all of that in 1 hour. But I think there's a common sentiment that we can agree on here. It's the mutual desire to find truth and make use of it for the good of the people, and the certainty that what other people are doing is also good for you. We have this desire to both know what is real and also what's useful, and then how can people contribute as well in our society. All the way from the basic levels of our community all the way to the highest levels of our government. How can we interact with one another? How can we build a new society that is what we all say society should be in the context of what is moral? I guess people will say there's humanist ideas that you'll find that we don't need God. We can just find this because of the goodness of humanity. We can find it from our own selves, just talking with each other. There's people that say that only this one book from God that is what we need to listen to, and that's it. And then there's other groups that may say, well, their own version of things. We'll just put it out that way. And their own version could be their own version of their belief that God said something else, or their own version of humanism, or their own version of scientifically based reasoning and pessimism that's involved. And I'm not sure if you heard of Machiavellian ideas, that everything should be induced by fear, for example, and all these other things that we've seen in the past, which I'm hoping we don't return to ever. The reason I mention these is that there's a lot of theories and attempts that have been made over the past century. The 1900s, we had great personages, be they good or bad, that rose up in the last century and brought their ideas and had ginormous results. And a lot of it resulted in a lot of bloodshed. We've had in the East the rise of communist leaders, totalitarian leaders, all of them. You had Stalin, you had Mao Zedong, you had Adolf Hitler, you had Mussolini. all these people, these men of destiny, rose up to bring the people from where they were with a man-made solution that they had, and brought together a lot of people with this common belief, common enemy, and we all know where that went. A lot of the things that they said were not per se in line with reason, but then how do we determine what is reasonable? How do we collectively come together and say what is true? Well, I can tell you God is truth. A lot of people agree with me. But then the common question in America we'll hear people say is, which God?
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I believe our friends here can concur on this, that no matter what version of beliefs we collectively have, we all are fundamentally talking about the same God. Whether we want to say we do or not, we do believe in the same God. There is that one God, and whether we say that creator is God, or we call the person Yahweh, or we call the creator of ours Allah, or we call our creator by another name, all of these names are names for the same creator that we share, and we're bickering about something that isn't really there.
Yeah.
Does it seem like I'm going somewhere? So what do you think, Kayvon?
Wow. I mean, I didn't hear one thing that I was disagreeing with there, John. Like I feel like it's very hard for people to come to consensus about a lot of things. And obviously, one of the blessings that we have as humans, human beings, is individual choice and freedom to explore reality and to see reality. To seek out things in our reality that make sense to us, and that brings us to different conclusions about how the world works and the mechanics of systems within that that reality that we decide to base ourselves in. But our experiences obviously can bring us and draw us together too. And like I've encountered that phenomenon, that of integration, I think is a word for it, in my life, and seeing how other people also share similar experiences, then end up, going to the same thing. So, like, for example, this is going to sound a little tangential, but I promise I'll bring it back to the discussion. Like I've dealt with a lot of joint pain in my life, and back pain and all that kind of stuff, just from like being physical and playing sports and not treating my body the best, and not doing activities that were optimized for my body. But then thousands, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other people have also done the same thing, to their bodies in different ways than I have. But something that I recently started doing in the past 8 months or so, is training in a way that respects my body. So like by walking, running, throwing, these basic things which are very fundamental to healthy human movement. And I have felt so good. But like in the exercise science world, how somebody should exercise is either left up to some ambiguous idea of, there's no proper way to do something, or the only way you can do it is by doing the like old school Arnold style lifting or whatever else. And that's sort of like what got me in pain in the first place. And I did that old style of doing things very well, actually. I held some state records back in my teens and stuff for powerlifting, all this kind of stuff. But the way that I see human movement now, it is to walk, run, throw, and breathe, essentially. And it seems so foreign to people in that world that, that's the way you should orient your training and how to look at the human body and see how that, we do those basic functions first before going into other things. And religion is no different really at this point. A lot of people, they have some principles, that they can agree upon. But where those principles come from, who has the right to say what principles should be followed, is heavily contested, and that creates a whole host of problems. And we see that now in every facet of society. Politics, driving, whatever happens to be. I mean, big or small. So I feel like, what brought me into, feeling connected and respectful of somebody else's opinion is having gone through something that brought me to the same place that they were at in my own way. And the only way that we're going to really be able to, I think, have a consensus about what the basic goals and mechanisms of how society should operate, how where opinions should lead us or not, is going to be through collective success and suffering, essentially, and that'll eventually bring us to a shared common place on a global scale. At some point.
What do you mean by this collective success and this collective suffering?
So if the way that we're doing things now, with for example, the way that we view the mechanisms of like war, for example, or politics or economy, right? And we see time and time again that these things are inefficient, or bring about short-term solutions, and they just leave long-term problems. Either because of the way that we set up our industry, for example, towards entertainment versus innovation, for example, like in the U.S., or everybody has their own idea about what should happen in the political realm. We need more government, we need less government, we need more spending, less spending. The government should be able to tell you what to do or not, or what not to do, things like this. My God is right, whatever. These things will have consequences that we feel and see, at some point. And those consequences will either help us feel positive or help us feel negative. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of times right now, those consequences tend to be mostly negative, or bring us pain, or cause us to, sort of, experience hardship. And eventually we'll learn from that, and we'll maybe have enough people first off in a community, and then a country, and then globally, to say, hey, look, what we're doing right now really doesn't work. How we're thinking about things really doesn't work. How do we, approach or reframe these things that we think about differently? Like, what is it that we're missing collectively? But we have to be brought together by our, somewhat by necessity, but also by wanting to, because we're tired of living in, in the inefficiency of life that we create or experience, from the actions and behaviors of others, or, a government, or whatever happens to be, or whoever happens to be. So that's, I guess, what I mean by collective. Collective is not a Borg, sort of society. Collectivism is individuals coming together and deciding on a large scale through consensus about what the right thing is. And oftentimes we have to go through, I would say, hardship and lessons to bring us to that point where we can look at somebody else and say, hey, look, you went through a similar thing that I did. What is it that we can both do to make it better for for everybody, for us and for others around us? So that's what I mean by collective.
Simone, you haven't spoken this time. What can you say as an individual that we can do to be agents of change in our society, to reverse these things we see around us in our own lives? How can we be agents of change? How can we be who we want to see in the world? They say this quote, be the change you want to see. How can we be that change we want to see?
First, hello, how are you? And I want to say that we can start within ourselves each and every day. that when we wake up, we should know that there is God, and everything we do, God should be first. So if we have a full conscience of ourselves and raise our consciousness to know that I am awake to serve my community, I'm awake to serve my family. Right now, as you see, the families are being all shattered. The children cannot talk to their parents. Parents do not want to talk to the children. The families are getting divorced from each other. And the reason all of that is because each person needs to be accounted for every action they do every day. And if we can raise our consciousness within ourselves every morning when we wake up and say, God, I'm going to do today one thing for my neighbor, or one thing I'm going to do good for my client or my family. That is going to raise our consciousness. And as we do put it into practice every day, it's going to become as like a habit. And it's going to create a better life within our community. And when our community see us, that we want the best for them, at first they may not see that. At first they think we have an agenda to do kindness to them. But when they see that you are continuously doing the kindness and love for the people you meet, then what's going to happen? That flame of love, the flame of purity is going to show to your surrounding. And that's how we can change our community or change our community within our household to see our truth within ourselves, what is our true agenda is to help our people. And that's very simple. It just starts from within yourself.
Actually,
Thank you
going full circle here, back to the beginning of what we discussed, and Bernie, I think you'll find this building back on what you had mentioned as well. It's that this idea of little by little, day by day, applying these changes, continuing to stick with these changes that we deem positive, that our society around us deems to be moral and, again, upright in conduct, and again, we're being truthful with each other and our more importantly ourselves. As we reflect on what we're doing every single day, we come to this realization that we are doing something that isn't in line with what we're saying, and we identify that. I don't think we should be per se so sad about it as much as we should acknowledge it and allow that truth to be known as a blessing, that we know how we can improve tomorrow. I say this because oftentimes a lot of people will do so many bad things and not even know they're committing bad acts. People will even believe their own lies. People will say things that are illogical, and they truly believe that, again, they're presenting you the most logical thing they can. The list goes on with a lot of things that per se may not be intended to be deceitful, but again, the issues we have can be further reaching than we understand them to be. For example, a lot of people modern day talk about environmentalism. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate environmentalism, and I appreciate the goals of environmentalism, and I'm not against the idea at all. In fact, I think that environmentalism is a good thing. I do, however, think that almost everything I'm hearing is duplicitous. It's lying, and I'm just being, again, a number in the numbers game. I'm not actually doing anything to contribute to the environment to make it a better place, because everything that I am using that's considered environmental is just another iteration of the industrial process that created the problem to begin with. So, for example, people say, and there's nothing wrong with buying an electric car. I think electric cars are good, but in general, the principle is if I go and buy an electric car with the intent to say I don't want to put emissions into the air, and then the source of my emissions is actually now the power plant that does the emissions, you're still kind of doing the same thing. You're not really running on green energy like the whole reputation may be. Oh, go green, go get an electric car. No, you're not really going green. Likewise, if I take us to the other route of eating different foods. Well, if I don't eat beef from farms, if I don't eat lamb and chicken, and I go and eat fish, oh, I'm more environmental. But then if you look at the other side, the overfishing of the world's oceans is a huge catastrophe. We are overfishing the world's oceans. Okay, well then I shouldn't eat fish. If I'm going to not eat land animals, I'm not going to eat fish. What do I eat then? That question comes up. My point isn't to say not to eat something, not to drive a certain vehicle. All of these are red herrings, is what I'm saying. As much as we want to go and solve the world's problems by finding a consumer solution, I am saying that is the least important thing on our list that we should focus on. I think we should focus on our spiritual identity. We should focus on what is in our lives within our immediate control, true and false. Can we continue to ask ourselves every single day, is what I'm doing the best thing for myself and my community? And our environment is ultimately a reflection of how we are. So if I keep a clean home, my environment is going to be a clean environment. And then when I go outside, I'm not going to go litter and throw trash in the grass. I'm not going to go pour oil from my car on the street. I'm not going to go and dump hazardous waste where it shouldn't be dumped. I'm going to follow the rules because I care about a clean environment, because I have a clean environment in my home. My environment around my home is an extension of it. Therefore, it's not the idea of out of sight, out of mind, or not in my backyard, but it's the idea of how can I be a responsible person in the limited ways that I can be. And if all of us as individuals can do that, we can really make a collective change. And all these things we've been hearing in the media will hear stuff that says that we need to, for example, be more environmentally conscious. We'll devise collectively, because we collectively have a same or similar sentiment, we'll devise means to resolve these problems. We'll adapt to the problems of our environment, but we'll also learn how to clean or keep our environment clean. And I'm not talking about carbon emissions. We have people right now that are living near pig farms, and the pig feces is spewed in the air, and the poor people living next to it have to breathe that. We're living in a world where poor people live and receive water from a creek or somewhere, and I don't know, some mine somewhere, they're not very careful, and all the sludge goes into the water source. The poor people drink the water and get cancer and they die. Very clear pollution of the water with actual sludge, and it's easy to prove. It's just these people are living in the margins of our society. And if you think about it, almost everything we get that's important to us is really in the margins of our society. The poor people, the poor in our midst, we're taught in the holy writings, is the trust of God. That is God's trust to the people who have the means to protect it. And right now, all of us are empowered. We're the meek who have inherited the earth. We are all empowered today with the means, the technology to ensure we don't pollute the world as we are doing. And I don't mean CO2 emissions. I mean actual sludge in people's water. I mean actual, and I don't mean, I'm not joking with you, actual pig feces spewed in the air for people to breathe. We don't have to do that. And this is happening. These are things that are a matter of cleanliness and minding about your neighbors. How are they going to feel if you hurt them? So I'm not going to be going and thinking abstract with anybody. I'm thinking about what is really happening around me. And I mean this from the simple level. We have neighbors. We live with our neighbors. Have you ever spoken to your neighbor? Have you said hi to your neighbor? Do you know your neighbors on a first name basis? I don't. This is rhetorical in one sense, but if anyone would like to answer here, by all means.
John, you mentioned very, very nice virtue is called cleanliness. And when I was talking to changing ourselves when we wake up and reminding God first, is that we have to clean our soul and our mind. When you have a clean soul and clean mind, then you don't let any kind of prejudice or any temptations comes within you. That will be excluded. It means you will be kind of detached from your own temptations. And that's what the Lord's Prayer, if you focus on, it tells us not to think about what's on this earth, is what it is in the kingdom come. That would be the heaven. That would be our what we can do to bring the heavenly love and humanity to this earth. And how can we do that? By cleaning our soul and our mind. And that's called purity. And that's what called cleanliness. And that's what the virtue of cleanliness is, not only just physically to be clean, is spiritually to be clean. So therefore, when you have a clean heart and clean mind, then you can be helping your neighbor, family, your customer, anyone who you meet that you comes through. And that's what we need to do with our community. But when they see you are straightforward, you act as a good Christian or good Muslim or good Baha'i or good religious person, then they see all that. And that's why many people think when we talk, that's what people can see us. They don't understand that 90% is through indirect communication. And through indirect communication is our action. So thank you very much for talking about that. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Since you mentioned it, the Lord's Prayer says, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on what Simone is saying, because it's been hitting me that we live in a very stressful society in lots of ways. And what's interesting to me is that we all struggle with anxiety and fear, and it really drives human behavior negatively in a lot of cases. And what Simone is mentioning is the antidote to that fear, is the faith. And what you're talking about, which really means a lot, is that it's a very regular practice. It's every day at a minimum, maybe twice or three times a day when you're really stressed out. But that's where we as individuals can get that strength to behave differently. And I agree with that. And that's one of the reasons I've really tried to look at what other people believe. What are their beliefs? What are the teachings in their faiths? And how can we find the common bonds between each other and encourage them on their path, and it encourages me on my path. So I think that's a really important point that Simone really brought in. And then Kayvon, as he was talking, I was thinking, our society tends to go towards an attempt at common thinking as opposed to unity. Unity requires diversity. if you're all thinking the same thing, if you're all agreeing on the exact same thing, you have conformity. But that's not the same thing as unity. And I guess that's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning is how do we reach that level of unity with the diversity that exists in our society?
It's funny you mentioned that, because unity in diversity, achieving unity in diversity, is the very goal that we have. We want to find unity with everybody, all the diverse peoples that can provide their diverse contributions. There's this understanding in the scientific community that by having biodiversity, it grants us the means from just a human opportunity point of view. Like what is it from a human centric, an anthropocentric point of view? Like humanity is at the center of everything. We're able to, with all of the biodiversity that we have, rely on a resilient ecosystem. When you have all these animals and plants and microbes and everything that exists in nature, when we have all of this working together, this environment around us working together, we have a livable planet. And not just that, we can find medicines from so many different plant species that exist around the world. We can find so many things that can help humanity progress. Inspiration comes from nature. Why I'm saying this to you right now, and why it's so important, it's that we have the ability, we have the means in front of us to pull from everyone to create a resilient civilization. Our civilization, its resilience relies on everyone's unique ideas, because everyone has something unique to provide for unique problems that, quite honestly, not everyone should care about. So someone needs to care about, how are my teeth going to remain healthy? Someone needs to care about, how am I going to keep my face healthy? Am I going to hurt myself by doing something to my skin, for example? Someone needs to care about, how am I going to dress myself, making clothing for humans. Someone needs to care about, how am I going to take care of my eyes? If I don't have good vision, how will I make glasses? There's someone that needs to be available for every single thing that we use in our world. The reason why our world is so amazing now, in a way, in a very big way, it's amazing. We have the most technology at our disposal than we've ever had in history. We can travel the world and not worry about losing our lives, per se, when we do it. Back in the old days, we had people called highwaymen. When you're walking on the road, these highwaymen would come rob you and kill you and take all your things. We don't really have that as much nowadays. We have police forces in most of the world. It's not everywhere, and I'm sorry for those of you who still deal with the highwaymen in your community, but for all intents and purposes, what I'm saying here is that we really live in a world that's transformed from where it was just 100 years ago. We have so much available to us, and we can rejoice in this diversity that we have from all the people that we share this planet with. Because of these diverse views, these diverse people coming with diverse ideas, we are able to benefit from each other. So we're already doing it. The way I see this is that we already are building a planet together. There already is a construction of a new world where we can all live together in peace and harmony. That's happening as we speak around us. The technological means is there, and there are people who are waking up spiritually. There are people who are realizing, wait, I shouldn't go killing this person because they don't believe as I do. You have people that commonly can say that we can have disagreements and not kill each other over them. It used to be that when people disagree about things, they go and have duels, and one person dies, one person lives, if one is lucky, I guess. In my opinion, if they're lucky, no one kills each other. But that's kind of the point I'm saying. We are not killing each other today. And if we do, collectively, I can agree. I think most of us agree here that around the world, we can say it's morally reprehensible to kill people because we have different views. Around the world, we've finally achieved this point of understanding as a human family, that I cannot go and kill my brother because he thinks differently from me. Can we agree to that? That around the world, we have this aversion to doing that to each other today?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not everyone, but the vast majority do.
And I think that if you openly proclaim that you want to go and do such a heinous act, that the majority of society would not just condemn you, but it's reprehensible. There are repercussions to saying that. No one would expect, if they were to say such reprehensible things, that society would respect them for it either. So even if they were to say it, they would know that there's a steep cost to their family and friends for saying that. So why I mention this is that we're entering an age where we're experimenting with new ideas that we've never really experimented with before. And as a part of it, sadly, we've abandoned the idea that we can have God in our lives in many places, because a lot of people view having had religion in their lives as the very symbol of the oppression that they had before they left. And it's very sad that people view religion in their lives as a symbol of oppression. They view it because the people that represented the religious in their community used religion as a means to oppress and to, and sometimes hurt, mutilate, and more worse off, kill in the name of religion. And it's reprehensible, and we can all agree on that. So we have this point where we're at right now as a human family. We recognize that it's not okay to hurt each other on the basis of beliefs, but yet we are still kind of traumatized because of how our society's portrayed religion to be the source of bloodshed. How can we, as in our limited circle here at the very least, how can we explain to people that in fact the source of the bloodshed was never religion? It was the people who were coming in who were not truthful. They were hijacking the message of religion to advance their own goals. How can we elaborate on this? How can someone who's lived in a religious environment understand that they did not actually have exposure to true religion, but instead they had an imposter who was, in the name of religion, causing them harm? How do we do that?
Wow. Man, like to have that sort of discussion with somebody. Well, I mean, either somebody's gonna be ready for that sort of discussion, open to the idea of talking about how the system of religion, the system of systems of faith have over time degraded, where ego and selfish desires of, certain groups or people, have sort of become intertwined into what that religion is thought of to be, and that's hurt people over, over the centuries and over the millennia. And I think there's a fair number of people, at least from a historical perspective, that would be willing to have that sort of conversation. Today, like, where there are some very sensitive topics that I don't want to get into, where people look at, the religious basis for certain policy being enacted, and taking those policies as being a direct attack on their ability to individually practice their rights and autonomy. It's hard to have this conversation about religion with them. And especially now, with more recent political events that have gone on. But at the end of the day, religion should give life and should promote freedom, like real freedom, and real freedom comes with certain, as individuals, right, a certain not concessions, but certain things that we have to work towards accepting as being healthy for us, because somebody who was more wise than us and more connected to that source of wisdom said that this is the best way to optimize our being inside and outside. And until somebody in our circle is able to realize that, then you really can't have this conversation. But if somebody's at least open to the idea that within religion, the source of happiness and assurance and justice, and all the positive attributes that we tend to that tend to coincide with a spiritual life and a godly life. If a person is willing to have to be open to that, then we can have this conversation. That's sort of how I view it. So this is a very contextual sort of thing. I don't think we can just openly have this sort of discussion with everybody, at least in my limited opinion in my circles.
Yeah, I've
Bernie,
I've had I don't know if this will make sense to, but I've had this awareness that everyone believes what they believe because they believe it's right. And that applies to every human being. And two people of the same faith, a husband and wife, a family, whoever, will have differences in how they believe, even though they are common on 99.9999% of the items. But it's inherent to our existence that we as individuals will believe what we believe because we believe it's right at that moment. And only through education and spiritual awakening and all of that will we change that. No one else will really actually change that. So it seems to me that some level of understanding of that and awareness and acceptance that that's really important to how we live our lives, is to understand that's where John's coming from, that's where Kayvon's coming from, that's where Simone's coming from. All of us are coming from that. An atheist or anyone from any other religion is coming from that exact same place. And we need to give each other the respect and the freedom to be who we are, right? I don't know how we get there in today's world, but I had a professor. I want to tell a quick story. I had a professor. I was studying the history of Christianity in college, and he came in, and we were near the end of the semester. We had been studying, the Crusades and everything that happened in Europe with the Protestant Reformation and everything. And he comes in one night. He says, I'm going to ask you one question. What was the most significant religious war in the history of the world? And we were all batting around all those things we had studied. And he stopped us. He said, no, it was the American Revolution. And we were like, that wasn't a religious war. And then he proceeded to make a case that there was no way those colonists were ever going to defeat the most powerful army in the world at the time unless they got divine assistance. and he pointed out that it was their unity on the freedom of religion that motivated the ministers and the churches to get behind the war effort, and that's what made the difference. Now, I don't know that I could spell that out, but it really did hit me that he really laid out a good case that the unity across these different faiths, standing for the other faith, they weren't standing for themselves. They were saying, I'm here because the Quakers deserve to be able to worship the way they wish to worship. I'm here because the Baptists deserve to do that. That unity was what, as he made the case, was what made the difference in the American Revolutionary War. And I think our society is at a very similar place. Maybe coming together at the level that Simone talked about and what Kevin, you just talked about, where people just really start to come together at the heart and have that genuine love and respect for one another. It seems to me that has as good a shot as anything. It's certainly not going to change based on who we vote for on election day.
Yeah, this freedom of belief versus freedom from belief. It's it's an interesting point, because clearly, if someone chooses not to believe in anything, a society should allow this freedom of choice to have that. But then to exercise the idea of freedom from belief to everybody who shares, again, everyone has their own beliefs, right? So it's interesting though how our society has come along to find out what does it mean to have freedom of belief. And definitely there is this idea going around that these messages that are supposedly coming from God are all coming, in fact, from the same God. That's a revolutionary message. The idea that the messages are coming from the same God. So the message that came from Moses is the same message that Jesus brought. That's an amazing concept for a lot of people, to believe that the same message that Jesus brought is the same message that a person named Buddha brought, a person named Krishna brought, a person named Baha'u'llah brought, a person named Muhammad brought, and so forth. These concepts are very big. The idea that it's possible that we all believe in the same God, and that we all share a common Father in heaven. Not per se in the sky, not the blue skies that we all share, but a heaven that's placeless, that has no place in this world. A heaven that our souls go to, that we can't really understand. And we all share this lack of understanding. And we understand a little bit more together from each other, but we don't really have any hegemony over that either. No one has the only thing. No one has the only way. No one has the only the only way to get there either. It's all in the holy books, not for me to tell you, not for anyone to tell anyone else, but the holy books themselves to speak for themselves. So I guess when we look at these holy books, we look at them, I see them as spiritual books of spiritual significance. Of course, there's a lot of division as to how far the utility of these books will go as to how we view our reality. I think we can all agree in a society that these books hold spiritual weight, spiritual value, and we should see them for the spiritual messages that they teach us. And focus less on history, but more on how can we good people? How can we be good people? How can I be a good person to my family? How can I be a good person to my society? What can I do for my society to make it better?
Yeah. And even people that believe that they're special, they have a uniqueness, that their way really is the only way. If they can at least respect that other people might feel the same way about their path and their direction, and treat them the way their prophet would ask them to treat them, right? That it's in all faiths, you should be treating others with unconditional love. It's taught there. So when we go into the element of judgment and all of that, you're veering from your own path then, right? Stay on your path, even if you think it's unique. That's fine.
Well, Bernie, I have a question for you, and I just want to I mean, this seems like there is no answer but that answer, but there's more, and I would like you to elaborate if you don't mind. I see people, and we talked about truthfulness from the very beginning and doing what we say we do. If people say they believe in something, that means they embody the teachings. Now, I don't mean to say that I've seen terrible people. I've seen amazing, beautiful people, but not one person have I met that follows all the teachings they have. I have not met one person on this planet, on TV, in real life, no matter where you call it. I have not met one person that follows what they profess to believe in. And when I say follow, I mean they follow all their teachings. I have not met one person.
Right.
John,
And
I think we have met. You just don't know it.
No.
That's
What I
why
mean
you
is,
have, John, that's why we have manifestations. They are the example. Just like Abdul Baha,
Yeah.
Baha'u'llah, Muhammad,
besides
Jesus,
Jesus Christ, okay? Besides Jesus Christ in heaven,
Well,
all right? I'm
yes.
talking about people living today
Because
that
we are
are
lesser
breathing,
being, John.
that are breathing, that are watching this, that I'm watching on TV, that I'm seeing anywhere. I walk with my own two eyes and see them on the street.
Well, I think the wisdom in that realization, John, is that, and hopefully this is like a good, closing message too, is just, we have to just strive. We have to strive to make our walk and our talk become, equal partners, essentially.
Yes.
yeah,
And-
and just, as you were saying that, just we need to be, when you observe that, you understand how people are, and you don't judge them, and do whatever you can to encourage them to follow their path. And as Simone was saying, at some point they can bring themselves to account and continue to grow and develop.
Exactly.
And all this thing, it becomes from parents have to raise the children that way. I was brought up that every Friday we had meetings. The whole family gathered together, sit down and talk. And we say we are 5 fingers. If one finger gets hurt, the other ones are connected and they get hurt too. So you bring in unity within your family members. When you do that, then the family members, each one, when they have children, they're going to teach the same thing to the children. So and it goes on and on and on. But it has to start from somewhere.
And it
So
starts
if
within
we
us.
can raise our consciousness now, then we can learn to change ourselves, to change with our family member. Then we can do the same thing with our children, and our children are absorbing everything we do in everyday life, and they're going to be our example.
Definitely.
Simple.
And I think to close out, we talked about in the very beginning opening statements, we talked about this truthfulness, keeping with commitments, humility, learning with humility together. It's important to remember that we have so much to grow, yes, but we also fall so short in so many ways. And it's not something to be upset about. it's something to rejoice in, that we have a reason to be humble. Because humility is one of the most prized possessions that we can have. And I'm going to tell you that I am very far from everything that I know I should be doing. But I am grateful that my eyes are open, that I see. I see that. I'm not going to say anything further than that. I see where I have to grow. And that's one of the most beautiful blessings that I can have in my life, that all of us have here. All of us, we have the humility to talk with one another about how we can become better people. And I just think, just maybe, if we were to consult with one another with a spirit of compassion for one another and a spirit of love and a desire to have a common purpose that we can all agree on and get there, just maybe, even if it's in your home, even if it's in a small community setting, just maybe you can show the glimmer of what our country, of what our world can look like. With that being said, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Bernie, Simone, Kayvon, all of you have made some amazing contributions, and we look forward to having Wade get on here next week and continue his discussion. This is an aside subject, but I think it is an important one. We want to be introspective, and we don't want to look at the faults of other people, because when we start focusing on the faults of other people, we forget literally the log that's in our own eye.
Yeah.
And I'll end on that. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful evening. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.